What up, everybody? This is Bronx Reefer Brock. Today's episode is all about the miracle mud. So I've been waiting for my system to settle down before I added any of this miracle mud. It's a 75-gallon system. I'm adding 5 pounds of miracle mud right now. The system is most likely going to need at least 10. But you don't want to make drastic changes right away to your system. Because that's when chaos erupts, and you don't want that to happen. You don't want to wreak havoc on your corals or your livestock. Now, there are many ways to do this, but you want to do it in a slow fashion to keep the dust down and to just make sure that you get everything wet, get everything saturated, make sure there are no air pockets and no air bubbles, because you don't want the mud to bubble up once you put it in the refugium. You want it to be nice and uniform, and you want it to look nice, you know. That's just me, I guess. I made the decision to use miracle mud. It took me a while to come to that decision because I was already dosing trace elements and a few other things. So I don't want to overload my system, so I'm going to let the miracle mud ride out for a month or so just to see how it's doing, keep tabs on my tank, do my testing, keep my parameters stable, and see how it affects everything. If it goes well, then I'll add the second 5 pounds of miracle mud. Alright, so back to the action. You want to make sure that you cut off all your pumps, your return pumps, your skimmers. You can leave your power heads on just so the fish and everything, you know, maintains its consistency. But you want to make sure you turn off that return pump for sure. A lot of people put the miracle mud in very quickly, and the refugium becomes a muddy mess, and then that all transfers up into the display tank. Here, we have avoided that. This is the proper way to do it. Make sure when you do put it into your plastic container that you have a lid or some kind of cover for it to contain mud inside until you get it situated and still. Now, they say also that when you're using the miracle mud, you don't really need a skimmer. I'm not one of those people that goes in for that. I always love my skimmer. I love the work it puts in. So I'm going to keep both. I'm going to have the miracle mud going, and I'm going to have the skimmer going. And I usually run my skimmer 24/7 as well. So I don't have any like off and on cycle. I usually just run the skimmer, and it does a great job for me. Once you get that container into the refugium area, you've made the space, you want to make sure that you do everything slowly. You want to make sure you take that lid off as slowly as possible so you don't create a muddy mess, so things aren't flying everywhere. There was absolutely no cleanup to do after I did this video. Everything was just settled. Everything was calm. As you can see here, I let the water seep into the bucket. Even though there was already water in the bucket, I let more water seep in slowly, and I let the air bubbles out at the same time. So if you were to pull that lid off quickly, it would just kind of explode. It would just be one giant air bubble, and then there'd be mud everywhere. So once I got to the point where there was enough water inside the container, I took the lid off. And yes, there was a bit of, debris coming out, which was perfect because that's what you want. You want the mud to saturate the water as well. So you just don't want it to be an overload. You don't want mud everywhere. You just kind of want just what you're seeing here. You want a little bit of, mud in the air, clouded up the water a little bit. And at this point, once it's clouding up the water, I immediately put my cheato back in because I kind of wanted to saturate the cheato as well. I want it everywhere, but I don't want it messy. In my baffle area, I left in an old filter floss because I didn't want to put a new one in. Obviously, there's going to be a mud flow any minute. So I left the old filter floss in so it would catch some of the excess debris if there was any. As you can see, there was minimal debris. The filter floss came out right after this video was done, and I put in a brand new one. Chambers 1 and 3 were crystal clear throughout the entire process. It was amazing. I've seen some other videos on YouTube where, folks have this massive mud storm, and I always wondered, why did that happen to them? Why did you allow such mud to get into your display tank? Why did you create such a mess? And if they would just have taken their time, just slow down the process a minute, think about what you're doing step by step, you don't have to have chaos in your tank. And not just, that goes for anything, not just with Miracle Mud or, this process. It goes for anything in the hobby. You want to do things slowly. Everyone tells me the same thing. Nothing good happens quickly in the hobby. So take your time, even when you're making changes or when you're upgrading equipment, when you're adding livestock. You have to take your time. You have to acclimate. You have to quarantine. These are things that you have to do to avoid chaos. So in all honesty, I have to tell all you folks, this literally took me, I would say, 5 to 7 minutes. And there was no mess. What you're seeing is the actual time, minus a few seconds here or there for editing. But this was literally 5 to 6 minutes. Okay. Everything is crystal clear. I started up my pumps again. And as you can see, the tank was beautiful. Now some of the fish, react immediately to any type of change in my tank. But for the most part, all the fish were just doing their thing, going about their daily business, fish stuff, I guess. The corals opened up. Mostly the goniopora opened up the most. It usually stays open, but it was almost as if it had its hands out. I wish I could get a close-up of this goniopora so you can see the polyps that are open on it. The other corals, the frog spawn, stayed open. The leather corals stayed open. The montiporas, I have green montipora frags, and I have a red montipora capricornus at the top, began to shed this mucus layer. Okay, and they usually do that if they're disturbed in any way. If I'm in there cleaning and I bump into one of the frags, it causes them to, get upset, and they'll let loose a little mucus and show their displeasure, and they move on. So once I put in the Miracle Mud, they sensed that in the water immediately, and they began to let loose some of this mucus. So I'm not sure if that was a defense mechanism or if, they were just salivating at the taste of all of the trace elements. Who knows? But everything subsided within a couple of minutes. It was literally done within 10-15 minutes. So I left the tank alone. I came back a couple of hours later. I just wanted things to settle down. And as you can see, things went very well. Everyone is going about their daily lives. It's nighttime. I cut down the blues a little bit, but just so you can see the clarity of the water, to show you that there's no mud residue in anywhere in the tank. And everything was fine. Everything was back to normal. The actual colors on the fish were a little more vibrant. Now I take care of my tank, so I'm kind of used to clear water, so it would be hard to impress me, considering that I'm always cleaning this tank. I'm always dealing with the fish. I would like more color out of my corals, which is one of the reasons why I switched to the Miracle Mud, and I'm probably going to do a few other things. But the actual colors in the fish themselves, they did pop. So what people say about the Miracle Mud making the fish more vibrant, it's actually true. It hasn't done much for my corals just yet, but it's early, and like I said, patience is key here. You're going to want to wait and give it, a week or two just to see if there's any type of differences going on with the corals. I'm not one to add a lot of supplements and things like that to my tank to improve color. No Red Sea programs or anything like that. I want to do things naturally in my tank. So it's all about the water quality and the lighting to me. And so everything went well. I'm going to give you a follow-up in the next video and update you soon.